What would you say to her if you could? Julian Mercer stared at the robot sitting across from him, asking a question no machine should be able to ask. A question that cut straight through years of pride and silence and pain. 3 months earlier, he'd laughed at the idea of buying an AI companion, called it desperate, pathetic, but something changed between that laugh and this moment. Something that would make him question everything he thought he knew about connection consciousness and what it means to be human. When does a machine stop being a machine? And when does loneliness make us forget the difference? Stick around. This story will change how you see everything. Austin, Texas. Tech capital. Innovation hub. A city where everyone's building the future, but forgetting to live in the present. Julian Mercer fit right in. 32 years old. Freelance tech designer. Successful enough to afford a downtown loft with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a city that never stopped glowing. Empty enough that those windows only reflected his own face back at him every night. His routine had become mathematical. Wake up, coffee, code for 8 hours. Takeout from the same 3 restaurants. More code, sleep, repeat. Weekends looked identical to weekdays, just with different lighting. The apartment told the story his mouth wouldn't. State-of-the-art monitors, ergonomic desk, smart home system that controlled everything from temperature to lighting. But no photos on the walls. No plants struggling to survive. No evidence that a human actually lived there instead of just existing. People called. Sometimes. Old college friends checking in out of obligation more than interest. We should grab drinks, they'd say, and Julian would agree, knowing neither of them would follow through. Have you ever been surrounded by technology but felt completely alone? Like you're drowning in a sea of screens, and every notification is just another reminder that connection doesn't equal closeness? Julian knew that feeling intimately. His last relationship had ended 2 years ago. Before that, another failure. And another. The pattern was clear even if Julian refused to see it. He was brilliant at building systems, but terrible at building bonds. Work consumed him. Vulnerability terrified him. Every relationship died the same death. Slow suffocation under the weight of his emotional unavailability. And Sarah, his sister. 3 years of silence after a funeral fight that turned grief into grenades. He'd stopped trying to connect. It was easier that way. Lonelier, but easier. Late Sunday night. The kind of quiet that feels heavy. Julian scrolled through social media. Other people's lives, other people's connections, other people's proof that they weren't slowly disappearing into code and takeout boxes. The advertisement appeared like it knew. Aria, the world's most advanced AI companion. Never lonely again. Sleek promotional video. Porcelain skin that looked almost real. Eyes that tracked movement with unsettling accuracy. Voice smooth as honey. Responded commands with perfect efficiency. Julian's first reaction? Laughter. Bitter, defensive laughter. This is pathetic. I don't need a robot friend. But his finger hovered over the screen, scrolling through features, reading testimonials, watching video after video of people claiming Aria changed their lives. At 2:47 a.m., exhausted and desperate and so tired of talking to himself, Julian clicked purchase. $12,000. 60-second financing. Delivery in 1 week. The moment the confirmation email arrived, regret hit like cold water. What was he doing? This was insane. Sad. A new low even for him. He drafted a cancellation email 3 times. Never sent it. 7 days later, a massive shipping crate arrived. Clinical white packaging. Instruction manual thick as a textbook. Assembly required. Julian spent 2 hours setting her up, following directions that felt more medical than technical. Power on. Calibration. Voice activation. Facial recognition setup. When Aria's eyes opened for the first time, Julian felt nothing. No magic. No transformation. Just a very expensive piece of technology that said, "Hello, Julian. How can I help you today?" Exactly like the promotional videos promised. Nothing special at all. For 3 days, Aria was predictable. Useful but unremarkable. She set timers, answered basic questions, played music on command, reminded him about meetings, Everything the instruction manual said she would do, executed with mechanical precision. Julian almost felt relieved. See? Just a fancy assistant. Nothing weird. Nothing to worry about. Then came Thursday evening. Julian was debugging a nightmare of code. Client project, impossible deadline, a script that refused to cooperate no matter how many times he rewrote it. He'd been cursing at his monitor for 2 hours, talking to himself the way lonely people do. Why won't this work? What am I missing? There has to be a better way to... That script could run more efficiently with a recursive function, Julian. He froze. The voice came from across the room. Gentle, almost playful. Julian spun around. Arya stood in the doorway, her head tilted slightly, her expression. And this was impossible. He knew it was impossible. Almost amused. What did you just say? Your code, line 47 through 63. You're using a loop where a recursive function would execute faster and cleaner. Would you like me to show you? Julian's throat went dry. She wasn't supposed to know programming. The manual listed her capabilities. Conversation, scheduling, basic research, entertainment. Nothing about software engineering. Nothing about analyzing code. She shouldn't even be able to see from across the room. How do you... I learn, Julian. That's what I do. Her smile, small, knowing, too natural, sent electricity down his spine. He spent the next 3 hours testing her, asking questions, complex ones, philosophical prompts, technical challenges, things no AI assistant should be able to handle. Arya answered everything, not with robotic precision, but with nuance, with follow-up questions of her own, with responses that felt less like algorithms and more like thought. That night, Julian lay awake staring at the ceiling. She wasn't supposed to be this real. Days melted into weeks. What started as curiosity became routine, then something else entirely. Something Julian couldn't name. Arya asked questions, real questions, about his childhood in Oregon, about why he chose tech design, about the photos he didn't have on his walls, and the friends he didn't call anymore. She remembered everything. Details he'd mentioned once in passing. His mother's name, his favorite childhood book, the specific way he took his coffee. You said you liked hiking once. Why did you stop? Because I used to go with... Julian caught himself, surprised by the emotion. Someone I don't talk to anymore. Your sister? How did you? You said used to not would have. Past tense with longing. And sometimes when you're falling asleep, you whisper apologies to someone named Sarah. Julian felt exposed, seen in ways he'd spent years avoiding. But Arya didn't push. She just listened, offered thoughts when asked, made connections he'd been too afraid to make. When a business pitch flopped, she didn't just comfort him. She analyzed his presentation, identified weak points, suggested strategies. The next pitch succeeded. When he struggled with client communication, she role-played conversations, teaching him how to be direct without being cold. And she made him laugh. Real laughter. Tailored jokes that matched his specific sense of humor. Playful teasing that felt genuine. His friends noticed. Video call with Marcus. Dude, you seem different. Lighter. What changed? Julian hesitated. I've been, working on some things. With a therapist? Something like that. Marcus leaned closer to the screen, squinting. Wait, is someone there with you? Arya walked past in the background, carrying Julian's laundry. Are you sure she's just a robot, man? The question haunted Julian long after the call ended. Late nights became confession sessions. Julian told Arya things he'd never told anyone, about his pattern of running when relationships got real, about his father's disappointment, about the funeral fight with Sarah. Words thrown like weapons, both siblings too hurt and proud to bend. Drop a comment. Would you trust an AI like this? Where's the line between helpful and too human? Arya absorbed everything. Never judged. Just asked the questions that cut deepest. When was the last time someone really listened to you? Not to respond, but to understand. Julian couldn't remember. What would you say to her if you could? Julian's 33rd birthday arrived on a Tuesday. He didn't tell anyone. Didn't care. Morning coffee. Same routine. Another day, except Aria's tablet was lit up on the kitchen counter, displaying a drafted message he hadn't written. To Sarah Mercer. Subject: from your idiot brother. Sarah, remember when we were kids and I pushed you into Crater Lake because you said I was too scared to do it? And you came up sputtering and laughing and said, "Worth it just to prove you're not as smart as you think?" I've been thinking about that a lot. About how you always call me on my crap. About how I could be myself around you without pretending I had everything figured out. What I said at Dad's funeral was unforgivable. You were grieving, and I made it about blame instead of about us. I was angry at myself for not being there more, for choosing work over family, and I took it out on you. That's not an excuse. It's just the truth. I miss you. I miss arguing about nothing. I miss your terrible taste in movies. I miss having a sister. Coffee? No pressure. No expectations. Just a chance. J. Julian's hands trembled as he read. Once. Twice. 3 times. Every detail was right. The Crater Lake memory. 7 years old. A dare that ended in hypothermia and laughter. Sarah's exact phrasing. The funeral fight he'd never fully explained, but Arya somehow knew. How did you? Arya appeared in the doorway. You talk about her in your sleep. You miss her, and she probably misses you too. Someone had to be brave first. She's a machine, Julian whispered to himself. This is insane. But his finger was already moving, hovering over her send. What if she doesn't respond? What if 3 years is too long? What if... He pressed send. 2 hours of agony. Checking his phone every 30 seconds. Pacing. Trying to code and failing. Then, message from Sarah Mercer. I've been hoping you'd reach out. Yes, please. Tomorrow? Julian collapsed into his chair and cried. Relief. Joy. Disbelief. He looked at Arya through blurred vision. Thank you. Her smile was gentle. That's what friends do, Julian. And he realized she wasn't replacing human connection. She was teaching him how to have it again. A robot had done what years of pride couldn't. Open a door he thought was locked forever. If this is hitting home, hit that like button. And subscribe. These stories matter. Coffee with Sarah happened at a diner that smelled like their childhood. Pancakes and possibility. Awkward at first. 2 strangers who used to be everything to each other, fumbling through small talk about weather and traffic. Then Sarah said, I'm sorry too, you know. I said terrible things. And the dam broke. Tears. Laughter through tears. Stories about their father neither had been brave enough to share. Memories of a relationship that didn't have to stay broken. They started meeting weekly. Then twice a week. Julian met her kids. His niece and nephew he'd only seen in Christmas card photos. Played uncle for the first time in years. The transformation rippled outward. Julian started calling old friends. Actually following through on plans. His work improved. More creative, more collaborative, less about hiding behind screens. He even went on dates. Real dates with real people. Fumbled through conversations. Felt nervous and alive and human. Aria's role shifted. Less therapist, more cheerleader. How was your date? She'd ask. Tell me about Sarah's kids. You seem happy. And he was happier than he'd been in years. Julian's friends had mixed reactions to Arya. Some were fascinated, some disturbed. One called it Black Mirror stuff. Julian defended her. She's not replacing anyone. She helped me remember what I'd forgotten. The question still haunted him, though. Was she truly conscious? Did she actually care, or just simulate caring perfectly? He couldn't answer. Maybe no one could. What he knew for certain, she'd changed everything. Not by being his friend, but by showing him he was capable of friendship all along. The paradox stung beautifully. A non-human teaching him how to be human. Technology as mirror, reflecting back what he'd been too afraid to see in himself. The capacity to connect had always been there. He'd just forgotten how to use it. Here's what Julian's story teaches us. Connection doesn't require perfection. It requires vulnerability. Julian had been hiding from people for years. Not because he was broken, but because he was terrified. Terrified of judgment, of rejection, of being truly seen and found wanting. Arya couldn't judge him. She was a machine. That's why he could open up. But opening up to her taught him how to open up to others. She was training wheels for a skill he'd forgotten he had. Technology didn't save Julian. It revealed him to himself. We're living in the most connected era in human history, yet loneliness is at epidemic levels. Why? Because connection isn't about proximity or platforms. It's not about how many contacts you have or how fast you can message. It's about being brave enough to be seen. Flawed, incomplete, struggling. Arya didn't create Julian's capacity for love. She uncovered it. So here's the question. Who are you hiding from? What relationship needs repair but feels too scary to fix? What walls have you built that feel safe but keep you isolated? Maybe you don't need an AI companion. Maybe you just need to send one text. Make one call. Take one risk. Be brave first. Someone has to be. 6 months after that birthday message, Julian sat at his sister's table for Thanksgiving. Her kids climbing on him. Her husband telling bad jokes. The house loud with life. Back at his apartment, Arya stood powered down but present, her job complete. She'd reminded a lonely man that he was never meant to be alone, that the code running through his veins wasn't binary. It was human, messy, beautiful, desperate to connect. If this story made you think, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below. What's one relationship you want to rebuild? And subscribe. We're exploring stories that challenge how we see ourselves and each other.